Hi, it's Colleen Schmidt once again with another increment for astrology education. We're continuing to look at the midpoints at this point, and we're looking at the midpoints part 3. And today we're going to finish up the personal midpoints that are created within the chart, making for a great study for counseling astrology or more in-depth astrology of yourself or someone close to you. Before I begin, I'd like to point out that the book I'm using as my main resource is referred to as Architects of Time, and it's a book by Martha Lang Westcott. And Martha does a great job. Page 106 to 109, she goes into great detail about these particular midpoints that we're going to be working with today. So, for today, I want to start with the ascendant. And the ascendant is our personality. It's our coping mechanisms for the outer world. And the ascendant is in conjunction, in midpoint with the Aries point, which is the greater world. So here we're looking at the personality and how we're relating to what's going on around us. It would be about handling our reactions even to what's going on in the greater world. It can relate to us in ways like the development of our reputations, for example, how we deal with those responsibilities that are put before us. Again, the reflection that we're leaving for the greater world. The ascendant and the sun then is the personality with what drives us. And here's an interesting midpoint, because oftentimes in an astrology chart, the sun and the ascendant are very, very different, sometimes appearing like two different people. Sometimes I would say to people, oh yeah, you're somebody that the rest of the world kind of reacts to, but that's not who you really are, because the integration of the ascendant and the sun actually happens at the midpoint. And that's where they become integrated. And it's how well integrated are they? Are you talking about being two different people? Okay. It's the ability to take charge of your daily life, to use that personality and to help implement that drive. That brings us to the ascendant moon. And the moon then is our emotional well-being and our emotional security. And here you have to look at whether or not that personality is in line with what makes us feel emotionally secure. In the case of the midpoint, this is where they come together. And this is how the personality can fit emotionally. This is how they make the fit. And how one feels emotionally by how other people treat that personality. Remember, the personality is filled with our coping mechanisms. And so it's leading us to wonder, is our behavior helping to fulfill us? That's a really good way to put it. Our own present behavior. Is it fulfilling to you emotionally? And that's what that midpoint is about. So we're looking at that interaction between emotional and our personality, but we're also looking at how does our personality fit into the whole domestic concept, our domestic concept. How do we fit with the people that are closest to us, our family? And that's a really good description there, because the moon is also our domestic life. It's also our public, the public in general. How do we emotionally deal with the public in general? Or how does our personality fit as we find ourselves out there in the outer world? Then it brings us to the ascendant node, our personality in correlation with those acquaintances that we make along the way, the people that we work with, the people that we're establishing connections with, perhaps to greater network. Okay, so we're looking at the personality and the interaction with those that we might be networking with. This is about the daily demands that are put on us by others. What do they expect of us? What do they expect of us because of our personality? And how do we establish and then maintain those connections? And that brings us down to the sun. And the sun is our drive. And how does our drive affect that outer world? How is the outer world, what's going on in the world, affecting our path that we want to take in the world? And that's a really interesting question, because some people want to do stuff or the kind of we want to do for the greater world. Other people don't really, they respond to the outer world, but they're okay not being a part of that outer world. The outer world is, the greater world is the impact of public opinion, basically. So your sun then is dealing with the impact of public opinion, and how does that gel? How does that drive that the sun have gel with public opinion? It's also about how well we fit into mainstream society in the outer world. Are we someone that's affected by what's going on? Are we learning about ourselves as a result of the observation that we're getting from those around us in the outside world? Brings us to the sun node. Since we are no longer going to have to worry about the sun moon, we did that last video clip, and that's just our relationships, just to kind of breeze over that. It's also maybe what we saw between our mother and our father, sun and moon. The sun and the Aries point, it's about the greater world and how it's driving us, but the sun node is more about those contacts that we're making, and we know what we know through the people that we know, our interactions with others, our contacts, our associations. These connections, are they fulfilling? Are they helping to fulfill the pathway, the journey that we're creating for ourselves? Are they helping us with our ambitions? Are they leading us to where we want to be? Are we, in making those contacts, are we fulfilling our life path? And these are considered more the male associates than the female associates because of the association of the sun and the node. So they would be our contacts that are male, versus if we were doing a moon node, which we'll look at right now, because the moon is our emotions and how we're affected by these contacts and these connections. Do we deal with others on an emotional level, or do we really, are we allowed to be ourselves with these people, or do we hold something back? Are we using the coping mechanisms versus just being an open personality? And once again, it relates to the female energy. So this would then be relating to the female contacts. And how much do we share with these people? How much do we share of ourselves? How much do we feel emotionally secure enough to share with others? And there's our moon and node. Okay, so let's look at the moon Aries point, since I just breezed over it. I think this is a really good point to point out right now, because politically we're in a mess. We have a time where people are so angry and they're tense and their blood pressure is high. And why is that? Because they are reacting emotionally to what is going on in their greater world. No better interpretation for the moon and the Aries point. It's also about dealing with the general public and it's also about female relationships that are occurring in the public. And it's about our relationships to the public as well as women. How we relate. How do we handle it? Okay? When we hear terrible things on the news, do we cry? Do we yell? Or do we just sit back and say, it is what it is? And all of that can be seen in this moon Aries point. And the final one we're going to look at today is the node and the Aries point. This is really interesting because the node is our connections and our associations. So one of the things that this represents, and in a timing chart or a predictive chart, you can actually look at this. It actually means public meetings. Meetings that occur, nodes, that occur in public places. And that's a really big one. And it's also about whether or not these connections that we're making, these associations, do they bring us out more to that world? Do they make us more aware of what's going on in the greater world, our interactions with them? Do these strangers, as we meet them, have a strong impact on us? All of that can be seen when we look at the node, Aries point, midpoint. And I'm going to leave it there today. So I hope that you're as excited about continuing your education in astrology as I am to give you these small increments for your astrology. Take care. Keep being excited about astrology. Keep studying.